Welcome to the Sex, God, and Chaos podcast, a conversation built to help you address the mess, connect the dots, and defeat addiction. Doing your work matters because if nothing changes, then nothing changes. Life is tough and we're here to help. I'm your host, Ben Derrick, and as always, I'll be joined by Roan Hunter. Let's jump right in. Roan, I cannot tell you how ready I am to talk about something other than pancreatic cancer.
Dude, yeah, that's depressing, man. I don't like,
Wow.
yeah, it's so depressing.
Wow. I feel like people had to finish that last episode and just have a drink or something. Like, gee whiz.
Oh yeah. Well, it's like, when you left me that message and, 'cause I mean, us trying to get on the phone together is just about impossible.
Mm.
But you sent this video message initially to several of us, and we're all like, it was so confusing because I have cancer, but I don't have cancer, not sure. And it's like, what in the hell? And so I had to call 2 other guys and go, dude, was that good news, bad news? I'm not sure. But they
Yeah.
set me straight because they were very confused too. So
Yeah. Fine.
anyway, but yeah, and then I think my initial phone call to you was like, dude, forget all that stuff. When are we going to record some more episodes? Yeah, get over your
You
cancer,
need a,
man.
that's right. You need a couple of friends like that in your life. Like, oh,
That
that's sad. Okay, we
y-
have stuff
y-
to do.
that's
Yeah.
right. Yeah, I didn't ask you. I meant to on that episode, but like, how many spiritual bypass platitudes have you
Mm.
gotten, in the process? I don't
Well,
know.
I can gladly say, just because of how I've designed my life over the past number of years, not many, not
Oh,
many.
dude, awesome.
Not even on social media. I mean, I think people are like,
Ah,
"Yeah, we know this guy. He doesn't like that
yeah.
stuff."
That's right. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So,
Yes. Yeah,
I
oh
can tell you one of
gosh.
the things that's helped me, and, we joke about it a lot because it's like, "Man, that why are you doing it? Like, shouldn't you just be sitting around kinda crying or staring at your walls like, what's happened to my life?" And certainly there are days and times where that
Oh,
happens,
yeah.
like, let's not
No
be
doubt.
disingenuous here. I've done a lot of staring in my backyard over the past month,
Yeah.
but moments like this where we can get in there and you can feel purposeful, I would say that, and the 12 steps actually talks about this, but a big part of recovery is establishing a purpose in your life and getting out
Mm.
there and serving. And to me, this podcast does feel like that. It feels like we're having these really honest conversations that are serving people, that they can listen to this content in the privacy of their own vehicle or in their headphones on the treadmill or while they're preparing dinner, shopping for groceries. And, we're talking about the things that other people don't talk about. I would say, with an educated point of view, there's plenty of people being sensational out there about sex online these days, and those guys, and I'll say men in particular, that are spinning up these podcasts that have these really hokey, kind of grotesque names because they want to talk about sex. Like, I'm just
Oh,
over that. I think it's a complete joke, and those guys ought to be embarrassed of themselves. And
oh, truly.
thankfully, I'm not in a relationship with most of them, all those guys that are doing that. We're not that, but we are going to, from a slightly clinical point of view, talk about things related to sex and chaos inside of marriages and relationships that are going to be helpful. So, us spending, 40 minutes a week to do this, it really is kind of like a lifeline to me at this point in my journey. And I think in yours too.
Oh, dude. Well, it's just that idea of purpose and meaning. This is kind of the higher order of life, because if we don't have that on some level, um, I sit with so many men, you do too, that's just a foreign concept. And so, man, we've got to begin to really focus, figure out what's my purpose, what is the meaning of this chaotic life that we all live in. And it's there, but it takes sitting with others, knowing and being known, all the good stuff we talk about, in order
Mhm.
to so often flesh that out in a practical way. But it is so critically important.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So the topic today,
Yeah, yeah.
I know. I
Who
actually
picked
love
this
these
topic?
episodes. Yeah,
Yeah.
you did, and then
Ah,
it's my
uh,
job to be your handler.
yeah. Oh dear. I'm like, what was I thinking?
Yeah, well, I think you were thinking these are the
Mm,
types of conversations that we have behind closed doors with couples that are in crisis. So today we actually want to take on the topic of the sexless marriage, the
oof.
sexless marriage, and
Dude,
just
even when you
as a
say that, it's like, oh
I
dear,
know,
oh dear.
I
Yeah.
know. As a brief commercial before we get into this topic, I would encourage our listeners to not hear this episode in isolation. We have spent hours and hours and hours talking about the proper place of sex inside of a marriage,
Mhm,
what it's for, what it's not for, what it does, what it doesn't do. We've laid the groundwork for that plenty. What we're going to spend the next 40 minutes roughly talking about is the impacts of a sexless marriage and how, in my opinion, and I believe yours as well, for a lot of couples, it feels like a solution. Where we're just going to stop having sex until this gets straight,
mm,
or we are not going to be the couple that has sex because X, Y, and Z. And the hope is kind of in the background, subconsciously, either from husband or wife. Usually from wife, the husband is usually willing to have sex even if they're abusive to their spouse, which is a whole nother episode.
that's
Um,
very broken. Yeah.
Yep, very, very broken. But in the background, there's some sort of sense of this is going to be a type of solution that'll help this marriage get better. You would say today, not a good solution set.
Mm, no. So often when we sit with couples, the only form of connection is sex. They're
Hmm.
not connected on an emotional level. They don't even value that. They don't sometimes don't even know what that means. But
Right,
sex is the connection. And certainly, I mean, in a marriage, sex is part of connection. It should be. That's why most of us. That's why we get married. But it can't be the end all be all. And if these other things aren't happening, when sex is the only form of connection, that is not sustainable, and it will break down at some
right.
point. Yeah. And man, when we just even talking about this, certainly we don't want the old church message of like wives, you just need to be having more sex with him. That'll keep him straight, and all that stupid
Mm,
stuff that we've heard
mm.
over the years. And
Yep.
your body's not your own, and like, please, just kind of work through this with us, because
Yes.
we are not going there on any level. However, it is something that we do see so very often, that sex was problematic way before discovery happened. Whatever discovery looks like, whether that was porn or an affair, or whatever form the sexual brokenness has manifested. Well, we call it sexual brokenness for a reason, because chances are, in the marriage relationship, sex was problematic before any of this kind of happened.
Mm,
And sometimes, it's problematic from day one. And so many couples we sit with, dude, honeymoon sex is most often terrible. And it will kind of set the tone even for the sexual relationship going forward. And there's so many couples that are like, that was part of the deal, and they've never really talked about it, worked on it, or tried to work through that in order for it to become the thing that God intended it to be, between a husband and a wife.
yeah. And I think too, I just want to call out, I love the line that you're taking here. And this is a lot while we're friends, because when you start taking a line through a topic, man, I'm just so in sync with you and in agreement with you. I sit down with couples a lot, and and I say to them, "Okay, so walk me through who taught you guys the role of sex, the place of sex, how sex goes inside of a marriage. what it's about, what it isn't about, perhaps even the role of being selfless in a bedroom. Just walk me through just kind of the brief, notes there on the 3-ring binder that someone handed you, and they just give me the glazed look across the
The
coffee
deer
table, and
in the headlights. Yes.
yeah, I'm like, exactly. So, and then they hate this phrase. My clients hate this phrase, but then they joke with me about it later. I'm like, okay, so sexually in your marriage for the past 11 years, you've just been winging it. And they're like, well,
Yeah.
when you put it that way, and I'm like, yeah, of course, who wouldn't be having trouble with this? And especially inside the Baptist church and through the purity culture years.
Oh,
Oh my
man.
gosh. I mean, like sex was something that gave you AIDS and that you saved for the person that you loved
Yeah,
and
it's
married.
bad, it's
And
dirty, save it for the person you love and marry. Wait a
that's
minute, that sounds great. Um,
yeah, that's
uh,
right. That's right. So no wonder
well,
these problems
yeah.
occur and early. The problems occur early. And I would say even especially couples who are sexually active before they're married, that sort of sex just has a different stripe, a different flavor. It's usually more erotic, more exciting because they're dating and they're infatuated with one another. And then when that shifts when they get married, boy, that's even more problematic trying to get those wires uncrossed. So,
Mhm.
as a response, I think we see a lot of couples. I know we see a lot of couples that just back away from sex and the marriage becomes like sexually anorexic. And this brings into the marriage more problems than people anticipate.
Well, just the gift of sex, there's so much that God gives us, in the sexual relationship between a husband and wife. Now, certainly, we teach, we believe that the emotional connection needs to be first, and then sex is the byproduct of that. But so often, we enter into a relationship, dating or marriage. Well, I'll just say dating, because I mean, everybody, well, not everybody. Most people have sex before they get married. Um, Now, there's a
Yep.
lot of Christian couples that will deny that, which that's problematic too. That will
Yes.
create intimacy disorder because we talk about the things that kill intimacy: secret, silence, and judgment. And so it's like this kind of secret keeping or not talking about that or not just being more open about that is problematic too. And so when you're having sex before you get married, especially if you're a Christian, man, there's some guilt and shame around that. Shouldn't be doing this. And then there's also a bigger dopamine rush because it's like, oh, we're not supposed to be doing this, right? That's the allure of any kind of illicit sex outside the boundaries of God's creation. Anytime sex is outside the order of His creation, it's always problematic. And so it's one of the things that couples so often that happen and they never talk about that and even their guilt feelings because they did that or whatever. um, and so, even in our questions, when we kind of take a couple through our roadmap, and we we use our roadmap with couples that where there's no infidelity or porn or any of that, and we start with owning your story, and there's a very large section of questions around sex and sexuality, grow like what you experienced growing up. Yeah, like what information did you receive? And information is different than the message. Information is like somebody did sit down with you and handed you a book and walked through that. Information is biology class, reproduction. Um, but the messages, those are the things that really kind of become our theology of sex, because when we're getting this information, and so often it's misinformation around, sex is bad, sex is dirty, don't do it, you're going to get AIDS, STDs, you're going to die. And so we're coming up with a message. And those messages really, I would just call it, become our theology of sex, our belief system about sex. And each couple, each individual in the coupleship they bring that into the marriage, and then they never talk about sex. So it's one reason we have those questions that we take couples through, because we know typically it is a problematic area in some way, shape, or form. Not always, but the vast, vast majority of couples, sex is has been problematic in some way, shape, or form. And the goal in all of this, whether you're dealing with sexual addiction, porn addiction, whatever, the ultimate goal is like healthy sexuality. And
Mm.
so we have to address this. And so often, because of betrayal trauma, whatever has happened, uh, the coupleship becomes very sexually averse. Maybe not necessarily sexually anorexic, but sex just becomes a hard topic. They don't want
Mm.
to touch it. They don't want to talk about it. And man, healthy sexuality starts with communication. It starts with talking about it. And man, we sit with couples that have been married 30 years and they got 4 kids. And obviously they've had sex, but they have never broached the subject in any kind of a conversation. And boy, that is tragic because they're really missing out.
Isn't that wild?
No, dude, see it all day long. Yeah.
All the time, yeah,
Yeah.
so this is, I think, a point in the episode where we could stop and say, "Alright, so we can talk about the conclusions that we jump to," and we discussed this years ago on a totally separate podcast, but we're looking for simple solutions to really complex problems, and the simple solution, usually from the man's side, is, "Well, if I could just get laid, our marriage would get better."
Just have more sex. Yeah.
That's right. Or yeah, the problem is we're not having sex, so that's the problem. And from the woman's side, God only knows what's going on in a woman's mind. I would never venture to
We
guess,
need
right?
Eva. Yeah.
I would not
Eva,
want to.
Eva.
Yeah, I would not want to offend the woman listening, but to some degree, I do see in most couples that there's like this assumption that the withholding of sex has a punitive motive, like, this is going to be punishment. I'm going to punish you, inside of the marriage, one way or the other. Really, what you're laying out today beautifully in just a few minutes is this is an incredibly complex situation. And whatever answer the couple has in their mind is the problem is probably 3% of the problem. And the other 97% you're not going to figure out until you start talking about it with someone. And I would say step one, actually, and people, boy, they push away from this so hard. But step one is to talk about it with someone that you don't sleep with.
Mm. Oh,
So
yeah.
you you don't need to talk about the sexual dysfunction with your wife. You definitely don't need to be talking about the sexual dysfunction with your affair partner because they're just kind of fixing everything because
Yeah.
of the euphoria
Yeah, that's
that you were
that's
just.
always a great option. Yeah.
Well, look, but I cannot tell you how many men I
I
sit with and they're like, "Oh my
Oh,
man,
yeah.
my with my wife, sex is just terrible. We don't, blah blah blah. But man, with this affair partner, I just
Oh,
never
yeah.
like." You gotta be kidding me, man. But
Oh,
anyway,
yeah.
that's a separate
Mm.
episode as well.
Yeah, we need
Uh,
another episode around that fantasy, not reality.
exactly.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah. But to just stop at those explanations of this is punitive and all those things. I think what we're trying to say today is it's tragic and natural based on the history, individual's history, for people to back up and just either they call a truce on sex in general, or they're just participating physically in intercourse, but they're not experiencing the intimacy or the thing for which sex was actually designed by God. I'd like to just to give couples listening some language. I'd like to just, and this is not like us, but
Mm.
I'd kind of like to go through a list to let people know, okay, these are the things that you will see increasing inside of a sexless marriage over time. How's that
Mm.
sound?
Oh, perfect. Absolutely.
All right, and I picked starting with this one for a reason because it's the one that I talk the most about, especially with men.
Mhm.
The feelings of rejection in the marriage will escalate.
Man, I hear that, just so often, and it's, because so often in a man's brain, we think, sex equals love, and we've got to untangle that for sure because that's kind of distorted thinking. Uh, but at the same time, that's kinda how we enter into marriage, and if we don't begin to sort that out, and this is what we see is, like, if she's not having sex with me, she doesn't wanna have sex with me, and if sex equals love, then I am going to feel rejected. Now, is that reality? No, it's not, but it's the byproduct of the distorted thinking that has to change. But the only way that begins to change is I've got to begin to talk with somebody, not my wife, outside of the bedroom, somebody that can help me begin to sort that out and getting to the place where, yes, I want sex. Sex is great, it's good in the marriage. We all desire that. However, if it's not happening, I'm going to be okay. I'm not gonna die. I don't have to feel rejected. I can begin to objectively understand that there's probably something going on with her that has really nothing to do with me.
Mm.
She's probably tired. She's had babies pulling on her, 8 hours before you get home, and she doesn't want anybody near her, touch her, talk to her, nothing. But, my interpretation of that is, "Oh, she's rejecting me." And then chances are, I haven't done anything to emotionally connect with her. And, that is part of the process of moving out of this, like, somehow, if she doesn't wanna have sex, I'm rejected, and I'm gonna invoke my man superpower. The S on our chest stands for sulk, and I'm gonna go into the corner, well, it would be suck and sulk, because 'cause I'm gonna go suck my thumb and sulk in the corner, rather
Mhm.
than lean into this and begin to figure out what's really going on here.
Yeah, for sure. And I think a big question that we should pose here on the podcast for all of us is how do you handle rejection?
Mm,
Because rejection, just like difficulty, is part of life. You will not go through your life without experiencing rejection. And it is a strong indicator if the rejection of your wife having sex with you sends you into absolute chaos is because you are overvaluing that part of intimacy in your story. And you're most likely, and this has never been untrue, you're most likely so disconnected you have zero intimacy with other men in your life and zero friendships. So you have put all the weight on your spouse to not reject you. It's actually not about sex at all. It's just
no,
about not being rejected. And then once you do that, they feel that weight, and a marriage is not designed, the bridge of a marriage is not designed to bear that weight. So certainly you're going to experience feelings of rejection. And man, talk about a feeling of rejection when discovery happens and a wife figures out and actually tragically probably has to see the type of pornography that the husband in this scenario, hypothetically, that I'm using today,
yes,
that the husband has been looking at. You want to talk about feelings of rejection and feelings of
mm,
insecurity and inadequacy that moves into the female portion of the marriage. Man, there you could add up all the times that your wife refused to have sex with you, quote unquote,
mhm,
and it would not touch the level
yeah,
of rejection that your wife's going to experience when she sees the smut that you've been looking at on your phone. So the feelings of rejection are obviously going to increase when sex isn't present. And you don't solve it through sex. What we're saying is these symptoms inside of a disconnected marriage are going to be on the rise when for an extended period of time, not an agreed upon period of time, because that's part of recovery, but for an extended period of time, there's no sex inside of the marriage. So rejection is a really big
ugh.
deal and one that I probably spend the first 6 months talking with a guy about.
Oh, yeah, and I think I spent 6 months talking with you about it when we first met, right?
Oh, hey,
I mean,
hey, hey,
yeah,
hey. All right.
easy,
Thank
easy.
goodness we can edit
Yeah,
this thing.
and I spent, hours on a couch talking about it, in Atlanta, so, yeah, we've all been there, right? Um,
Yeah, well, it's again, it's ubiquitous. It isn't, like there was some crazy amount of rejection going on inside of my marriage. It was just rejection in general, I couldn't handle. That's why I was such
Yes.
a chameleon codependent. I just could not handle somebody rejecting my
Yep.
input into their life. And, me complaining about that inside my marriage was just an indicator of a much deeper problem. So, all right, we got to move on. It's a big list here.
Oh, yeah, dude,
So,
it is. Um, and just, along those lines, just I mean, part of what we see is, like, sex was problematic before the couple, came into the office in crisis over some kind of sexual brokenness. Uh, that is, I hate to generalize, but in general, most couples, sex is problematic before any kind of discovery. Even today, the young guy that, because of high speed internet porn, he's been, I mean, he's been hooked on porn, and he's trying to deal with it, and the wife may know about it, and it's not a secret. She knows, and then they get married. Well, it's problematic if he is not working on that and trying to deal with that, in his journey, in his recovery. And then if he is still continuing to act out with porn, that's going to become a bigger problem. So it's like we've got these issues that were there and that get into the marriage, and then the bigger issue comes up, but we've got to address this kind of unhealthy sexuality, problematic sex, and moving towards healthy sexuality. Even I often, I mean, a lot of people uh, from all over, and we get referrals from other therapists when it's sex addiction or porn addiction. Well, we're also clinical associates with the American Board of Christian Sex Therapists, which is the healthy sexuality side. And I mean, that's the goal. It's not just to stop doing something and then everything's going to get better. No, we've got to really begin to work on, how do we get to this place of sex becoming the thing that God intended it to be in the marriage? And dude, I don't think this gets spoken to enough, or we don't hear it enough. But after 40, phew, 42, 43 years of marriage, and 5 years of dating before and having sex before marriage, um, dude, after a lot of work and a lot of practice, dude, I mean, our sex life is just, I don't know, rich is the way I would describe it, and that doesn't
mm,
mean like hanging from the chandeliers, but it's just, man, two people that know each other, and know God and are aware and connected and all of those things. Man, there's no greater sexual experience, on the planet than just emotionally connected, intimate sexual experience. It's what God offers us, and it is available. I think back on our podcast episode we did with Carl Leonbauer, that
mhm.
Fire and Song podcast, man, and he did just a great job of, like, man, this is what is available to us. But so often, man, we don't wanna walk that path and do the work to get there. But holy cow, there's no greater work, I don't
Yeah.
think.
I made the mistake of saying that to my sons a couple weeks ago.
Yeah. It's great.
They're like,
I
"Oh,
mean,
that's oversharing, Dad. We
yeah,
don't care about
Dad,
this."
that's gross. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Stop
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but it is a beautiful thing, and I think I would say, just as a litmus test, it doesn't have to be off the rails. A lot of people are
No,
listening
yeah.
to this podcast, and they're just in a dial turning situation. But if it is not, life-giving and
Mm.
restorative, then it's worth talking about. There's some things that can change there, and we could turn the dials on this.
This episode of Sex, God, and Chaos is brought to you by Hopequest Ministries, home of the Trek program, a 12-week residential recovery experience for men struggling with sexual addiction, pornography, or other life-dominating behaviors. If you've tried to change on your own and keep ending up in the same cycles, Trek is different. It's not a boot camp, and it's not a band-aid. It's a Christ-centered, clinically excellent environment where men learn to face the real story behind their struggle, to heal, not just to stop. Trek helps men uncover the emotional wounds, patterns, and beliefs that keep them stuck, and then rebuild their lives on truth, accountability, and grace. It's designed for men who want freedom that lasts, not just from addiction, but toward purpose, integrity, and restored relationships. I've seen what happens when a man finally stops pretending, gets honest, and lets God rebuild him from the inside out. That's what Hopequest does every single day. If you or someone you love needs help, don't wait for rock bottom. Visit hopequestgroup.org to learn more about the Trek program and talk with someone who understands what you're walking through. That's hopequestgroup.org, because real recovery isn't about hiding the chaos. It's about finding hope in the middle of it.
The next thing on our list, I think this leads into very, very well, is feelings of loneliness
Oof.
inside the marriage. Man, that's such a big one, and I think it is really, really hard for the masculine part of the marriage to put their finger on that for sure. But the loneliness of being in a sexless marriage, and it feels as though your partner is just indifferent. And I will say, in my client base, the females in sexless marriages express this faster.
Oh,
He
yeah.
he just feels indifferent to the fact that we're not connecting physically. I don't He's checked out. That is a very, very heavy feeling to be walking around with every day.
Oh, yeah. Well, and so many men, kinda live in this, isolated state of desperation. And as you said earlier, trying to get all of those emotional needs met, from your wife, dude, that'll drain her, and then when you get rejected, in this, like, when you don't have others that you're talking to, connected with, the feelings of loneliness, just escalate and increase dramatically. Um, and again, I think so much of that is just men lead these isolated lives. They may have lots of acquaintances, work
Mm.
buddies, hunting buddies, fishing buddies, whatever. But as far as like talking about this stuff on a deep level with someone, it or any kind of emotional awareness, it just doesn't happen. And so that loneliness increases exponentially.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And I think no reason to overstate it here, but if people are thinking, well, we will feel closer if we're not having sex, just that's a bad way to think about it. It
Oh,
really is. It's
yes.
going to lead to some difficulty that could be avoided because it's avoidance of the actual work that would pull you back together. That again, we would announce just in case someone hops into this episode 30 minutes in. We're not saying sex is the solution. That is not what we're
No,
saying today. But loneliness is going to increase. I think, this is interesting. The next one we talk about connected to excessive porn usage, which often is the case. And again, I would say on the female side, this is on the rise. This is on the increase.
it
That
is.
females are being trained through social media at very young ages to be visually stimulated in ways that men were trained all those years ago with paper copies of porn at gas stations. But the presence of depression and anxiety and how that
Mm,
has increased in our society today, man, this topic here, I'm gonna have to let you take because it just
mm.
gets me so angry. I'm just so infuriated at what the hell that Steve Jobs released into our world by giving us tools that make us more efficient and more addicted than any human
Mm,
beings at any other point in history. But the levels of depression, the levels of suicide that are happening at 10, 12 years old, a lot of this stuff is back there due to porn usage. But in a sexless marriage, we are going to have a higher risk of increased porn usage, at least in my client base. That's been my experience over a number of years now. So if we're backing up from each other physically inside of our marriage, then we're probably going to have a
Yeah.
larger chance of depression and anxiety that's ruling the home.
Well, there's a reason why there's an apple with a bite out of it on the back of your iPhone, right?
How crazy
It
is that?
yeah, because it goes back to the temptation, and the violation of the boundaries, that Adam and Eve, did, and all hell breaks loose. And, a natural byproduct of loneliness is going to be anxiety and depression. And
Mhm.
so, and porn use is going to certainly increase anxiety because of what's going on in the brain chemically with the excitement chemicals that are releasing and all that great stuff. It's like the alcoholic that he drinks alcohol, which is a depressant, because he's depressed. It's the same thing with
Perfect.
porn.
That is a perfect analogy.
Yeah, it's same thing with porn. I'm gonna ingest this anxiety producing material into my brain, to help me with my anxiety, and I'm actually just creating more anxiety. I mean, it all makes sense just from a brain standpoint. And so, obviously, if you're in a relationship and you feel like you don't really have a partner, you don't have the support as men, you don't feel respected, all of those things, well, I am probably going to wind up being depressed. And certainly all of that is a setup, to some kind of crazy, adultery, I hate the word affair, because, I see this person, talk to this person, oh, guess what? Things start lighting up, and I'm changing my emotional state, by engaging, in some activity, illicitly, and I'm subverting, the relationship that's right in front of me. And so now, because of the emotional dysregulation, I don't know how to deal with depression. I don't know how to handle my anxiety. Well, now, oh, wow, this feels really good. I want more of that. And so, I mean, and again, so often we see up underneath acting out behavior, whatever form that takes, is some underlying depression. And it's kind of, we're all bipolar, and the manic phase of bipolar is when we're acting out. It's like we're riding the rocket ship to the moon, as I call it. And then when we're not, we're kind of depressed, just going through the motions of life. And so this thing that robs us of the true life-giving stuff of intimacy and relationship, and we're just, all we're doing is perpetuating, well, we're driving the problem, we're making it bigger. And so I've got to make those connections to begin to see this thing is not just affecting me, in one particular way. It's cutting across every aspect of my soul. And so maybe if I really began to focus on the relationship, dancing with the one that I brought to the dance,
Mhm.
maybe this could all change and get better. But all of these things are factors that drive the wanting to go medicate, numb, escape. It changed my emotional state, and
Yeah,
it's a
exactly.
trap.
I would say to to layer something on that you and Eva talk about frequently is pointing your sexuality at your spouse and your spouse only, which is that's an awesome idea, and I participate in that idea. I think it's a great way to frame that. However, if the place that you're supposed to point your sexuality, you can't, or you feel like you can't, or something's broken there, what we're saying is you're going to increase your percentage of pointing your sexuality towards other things. And your spirit inside of you that is calling out for you to live by design, that's what the DNA, the God image is going to be calling out in you, then it's going to bring depression and anxiety into your life when you're operating outside of design. And so nobody is saying like, hey, if you're looking at porn, we'll just blame it on the fact that you have a sexless marriage. Because I sit with a lot of guys that love to do that, man. Well, I'm
Oh,
only
yeah.
doing this, but no,
Justification.
yeah, that's not how that works. But I think explaining to people in a very neutral way that you are designed to point your sexuality at your spouse, and if that is a cul-de-sac, then you're going to start trying to figure out ways out of the maze. And the ways that you do that through office flirtation, I see that happen so often. It's
Oh, yeah.
just a lunch with a coworker, or I'm just searching this on Instagram. It's summertime. I'm just looking for people on boats or whatever. However you
Mhm.
figure out how to backdoor looking at bathing suits, which ends up looking at porn because the algorithm. That sort of stuff is going to bring depression, anxiety into your life. I want to call back
Yeah.
to something you said earlier that because this is the next on our list actually is the deterioration of communication. So this is a really interesting link for the male brain in communication and sex. I don't we really haven't been taught how those two things go together. I would love for you to riff on that for a few minutes, how communication and sex are connected.
Oh, it sex is can be such an emotionally charged subject, especially when there's been some form of acting out behavior. It's like, "Oh, we don't wanna touch it, if we talk about it, whatever, she's gonna get triggered and she's gonna spin out," or he, women act out too, by the way. Um, and so just when you've got that stuff going on, man, communication, is non-existent almost, because of fear, because of anxiety. However, what we see, as I said earlier, that communication around sex was lacking before anything was discovered, and so beginning to talk about this, uh, part of what has to happen is each person has to begin to develop shame resilience. In my case, it was like I was very ashamed of the things that I'd done and admitted all that to Eva. And as I talked more about it in groups, that's a key component, being able to talk about it and share it. It's one of the ways we develop shame resilience, even for partners. We see this so often. A wife will go to Eva's group that she does, called Brave Sisterhood, because we're always like, you really need to get in a group. You need to be talking to others that are safe people, and that's the only place you're going to find them. Um, they will come in and they will hear other women, and Eva does a great job of like writing her to where we're going to focus on our own growth. We're not going to be in here bashing husbands and talking about what they did. However,
Right.
it's going to leak out, it's going to come out, and man, a wife will get triggered. And what that is, it's part of what we call couple shame. That gets tapped into, and then she's like, "Oh, I can't go to that group." Well, the best thing that she can do is go to that group and be able to sit with that, hear hard things, and she's going to develop her own shame resilience. And those are the things that are going to allow us to begin to communicate over a very charged topic at that point, to where we can begin to sort this thing out. Because going back, once again, this was problematic before anything hit the table.
Yep.
We just see that so often. And so I've got to get comfortable with the uncomfortable. And I've got to begin
Mm.
to talk about that, to where we want to get into growth mode. How do we move towards healthy sexuality, and move out of this chaos? And it is possible, but there's parts of it, pieces of it that are essential in order to move forward rather than stay stuck.
Yeah, man. Oh, that's a perfect way I think to end that particular uh fallout here is that it becomes such a point of friction that keeps us
Oh,
stuck because we can't talk about other things that are much more important in our marriage and in our lives because we're stuck. We're doing the dance around not talking about sex. So, man, it's just costing so much. But yeah, the communication piece and coaching couples, and I learned this from you, just watching you over the years. Like, let's talk about how this conversation goes sideways because it's going to go sideways and probably the same pattern every time. Let's bust
mhm.
up that pattern, kind of like busting up concrete. And once we bust up that pattern, we can start putting new patterns in place. And these patterns that are healthy are going to help us discuss our needs even outside of sex because you have needs outside of sex. So you need to figure
Yes.
out how to talk about those things. So this conversation is so fruitful today. I feel like we should probably extend this out at some point in the future. But just
Mhm.
to give our listeners a great place to land, you and I were talking off mic before and proposing that just people's overall satisfaction in life goes down because of this issue, which is, again, a fascinating fallout of this because people don't think about it this way. That if you're involved with a sexless marriage, you're going to be a lesser as an employee, as a father, as a son, as a member of the community. Not because if you can't have sex, you're a less than person, but because you have something that is in your life that is not operating by design. And there are so many of those things,
Oh,
but most people would not lump sex into that category. But
no.
you would say, yeah, that's going to cause problems outside of just your marriage.
Totally. And, Eva does a great job in working with wives around this because, she helps them move away from desire uh, to the idea of pleasure. And, I mean, biologically, women, they only have sex on the brain 48 to 72 hours a month during ovulation. Whereas, for us men, it's like a ticker tape parade in the back of our heads because we're producing millions of sperm cells every day, right?
Yep.
And so you've just got this basic biological these differences that are just fact, and that even in and of itself is kind of a setup. And so Eva will work with a wife because there's so many wives that well, I just don't have a desire for sex. And what she will begin to help them do is to focus on pleasure, like well, is it pleasurable to just lay in the bed, holding each other naked, and feel skin to skin contact? And most wives will say, well, yeah, that feels good. Well, guess what? Desire will follow pleasure. And so when
Hmm.
she begins to feel that, desire will awaken. Now, we always the caveat with that is we should never be having emotionally disconnected sex. The
Mm.
emotional connection should be there, and then you begin to work on, especially for so many wives, to like it's just more the idea of pleasure. And then, she talks about what it does for a woman's brain and for her body from a stress standpoint, from a connection standpoint, all the things that are going on is I mean, it is it's a wonderful gift once again that God has given us in order to be able to like enjoy our life partner and have that richness that is missing in so many marriages. I was reading Sheila Gregoire's book, 30 Days to Better Sex, one of her books, but she talks about the women's clitoris. And to this day, doctors, scientists, research they don't really know the function, why it's there, other
Yeah.
than, dude, it is there for pleasure for a woman, and uh, it's like, dude, that's the reason God made that and created that, and it's pretty fascinating that so many women will just say, "I just don't have a desire," and it doesn't even feel good. Well, that's something that probably needs to be addressed and needs to be worked on, and it can change
Mm.
if you're willing.
Yeah, man. And we say this so many episodes, but the work is messy, isn't it?
It It is. Oh gosh, yes. Roads in Tennessee, not Texas, right? Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Very windy, and you don't know what's over that next hill for sure.
Nope,
I
nope.
think what I'd like to do to close this episode is just draw people's attention to y- the book. You and Eva wrote a book that discusses so many of these things and incorporates your story into how this works. And I've got it actually pulled up on Amazon right now. In this review, I just want to read this for our listeners. Um, Matt H says, "This book has laid the foundation for healing in my life and uncovered many parts of myself that I had hidden so deeply. I pray this book touches thousands more lives in the way it has mine. There is healing. There is recovery. There is our Lord Jesus Christ who desires nothing more than restoration in our
Mm,
broken lives." Man,
wow.
Matt, thanks for
Uh,
that. Thanks for that
yes.
review.
I did not pay that guy. Yeah, I gotta
Yeah, I
track him
made sure he
down.
wasn't
Yeah,
just a guy from Deer Camp, right?
that's right.
This was a real review. But
Yes. Mm,
especially in regards to the role of sex in marriage, the impact of a sexless marriage, the impact of pornography.
mm,
This little gem on Amazon,
yeah,
if you're a person that wants to, grab it on Audible and listen to it, or a person that likes to read, quickly through it's a short book. It's not a lengthy book, but it is calorie dense.
mm,
So I
mm.
just want to encourage people who are listening to this podcast, if you want to hear this topic addressed in a little more comprehensive way, the book Sex, God, and Chaos by Ronan Eva Hunter. You just search Sex, God, and Chaos. Don't just search
Eh,
Sex God on Amazon.
yes.
Sex, God, and Chaos. Dig into that book. It will be a source of healing.
Amen. Thank you, dude. We don't talk about that book enough. So yes, we Eve and I are kind of talking about kind of our next book project and looking at just something more of a general take on marriage. Certainly, sex will be a part of that, but just like what is a healthy marriage? It's kind of the in my head. I'm thinking the nurturing marriage or something
Yes.
along those lines, because it's either if we don't nurture it, if we're not actively doing that, we're going to neglect it, and dude, that
Stay tuned for
neglect
that.
is what happens. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Love you, brother. Let's pause it
Yes.
there.
All right. Love you, dude. Fun, fun.
To learn more about what you've heard today and to engage with the Sex, God, and Chaos team, visit sexgodchaos.com.